So welcome everybody, welcome all our Torah Anytime viewers. So tonight we're going to discuss a little bit about Hanukkah. Now, the aspect that I want to discuss about Hanukkah will be specifically the oil, as this is a very common thing that many Sfarim speak about the oil, because it's something that sticks out. When you look at the holiday of Hanukkah, so you look at the majority of our other holidays. So we have, Purim, we were going to be, annihilated by Haman in one single day. We won. Right, we celebrate, of course we eat, and of course we make feasts and things like that. Pesach, we were going to be, keeping slaves, but we were freed, so we got every holiday, Shavuot, Matan Torah, every holiday, we have this huge, crazy thing, the miracle that happened to us, and we celebrate that. Hanukkah, we have something very interesting. There was a crazy miracle. It was, it was the time of the Greeks ruled the Jewish people, and thank you very, very, very much. Thank you. So the Greek ruled the Jewish people. It was the time of Antiochus, and he decreed that anybody who is practicing Judaism will be killed, and not only killed, will be tortured. And they went and they destroyed the Bet HaMikdash, and they put like a temple of Zeus inside the Bet HaMikdash, and they forbid, also the Jews were, some Jews were helping him, the Hellenistic Jews. It was a whole issue in itself. And then came a group of elderly, rabbis, the Matityahu and the Kohanim of that time, and they fought against the strongest army known to man at that time, and they won. And then there was, this little flask of oil that, stayed lighting, and we sort of forget about the whole idea about this crazy war that just won, and we focus just on the light. And you look in the Gemara in Shabbat, Shabbat, page 21b, says that, discusses the miracle that happened during this time, and it says that the Greeks entered the Bet HaMikdash, they contaminated all the oil, and then when the Choshmanim came in and they were looking for all the oil, they couldn't find anything except for one little flask of oil. And then they lit the oil, and then it goes on and how it lasted for 8 days. So, and it sort of speaks in a passing about this miracle of, these 5 Jewish rabbis went on against the Navy SEALs at the time, and we don't even talk about that. We're dealing with no, let's focus on the oil. So, there's obviously something that is going on in this oil that we have to crack the code for it. To put this in a little bit of a different perspective, imagine you have a close friend, and this close friend is just down on his luck. He issues with his marriage, issues with his children, issues with parnasah, issues with everything. And you decide, you're well-to-do, you decide, you're going to take him on a little extravagant, vacation to get his mind off things. You have the money, so you decide you're going to spoil him silly. And you go, and you take this, I don't know how it goes. You rent a private jet or you hire a private jet, and you take him to Switzerland. Reason why I take him to Switzerland is because I did research and I wanted to find out what is the most expensive hotel in the world, and it's in Switzerland. The most expensive the suite. And you decide you're going to take him to this. It's the Royal Penthouse Suite in the Hotel President in Geneva, Switzerland. In case you want to go after the class for Hanukkah break, the one night is only $67,000. So it's not rounded up to the 70. They kept it 67 because every penny counts. So this is an 1,800 square meter suite with, I think it has 12 bedrooms, each one with its own bathroom. So every hour of the night you could switch to a different room or however it is that you want to play the game. And then besides that, you decide to take him to this nice place. You decide, you're going to rent him, you're going to leave this amazing car. You're going to rent him out a $2 million Ferrari, just for him to drive around in the area because you need to drive a car. So apparently. And then you do all these crazy day trips, whatever, you take him to the Swiss Alps. The top of the top, you just shell out money after money after money after money. And then for 10 days, this is what you're doing. And then on the way back, you're driving back to the airport in this $2 million Ferrari and, to your private jet. And you get over there and you stop by, you're you're hungry before you want to grab a bite to eat. See a nice little kosher place over there. You jump in, it's a little mom and pop place. They make a little, a meat sandwich, and you guys eat the sandwich and you go home. You go home, each goes on their own way. A year later, you reunite with this friend. And you're so remember that, vacation we went last year. He was like, yeah. He's like, that sandwich? I can't get it out of my mind. He says the sauce on that. And he goes on for the next hour just speaking about that amazing sandwich that he did. And after that, he gets up and he just leaves. And they're like, are you serious? The sandwich? He says, it shelled out over $1 million on this vacation. And you're talking about a simple sandwich? That's all you care about? That's what we're talking about. God made us a crazy miracle. There was Jews, generally are not built to fight. We hire the fighters, or we train the fighters, or we sue the fighters, but we're not the fighters. That's usually where we go. So, the fighters come to us, so we heal them as the doctors, and then we sue the other people. We're the people behind the scenes. We're not the people in the front of the line. So we have here a bunch of people which are not fighters, beat the fighters, and we're like, no, but the sandwich, the oil, that's what we're going to focus about. Does this make any sense to anybody? So, it's nice. It's a nice added touch. If the Jews wouldn't have won the war, there would be no Judaism today. By the way, if there was no Judaism, if that whole miracle of Hanukkah wouldn't have happened, not only Judaism would not exist, Christianity would not exist, and Islam would not exist. This came, before Christianity and Islam. So, I'm talking about this story happened over 2,000 years ago. So, I made a bracha for all those online. Got to drink a tea very slowly because it's so hot.
Now you're going to hear that sound. I hear it all the time now since you told me. Yeah, after you said we hear it all the time.
Okay.
That's the thing I always know.
All right. It's delicious. Thank you. Okay. Now, if the miracle wouldn't have happened, so we wouldn't have Judaism. If the miracle of oil wouldn't have happened, so we would probably be a little thinner, a little healthier, because we wouldn't be eating oily food. So we wouldn't have latkes, right? And we wouldn't be eating jelly donuts that's soaked in oil. We wouldn't have these things. It's a serious thing because we take these things very seriously. These are the thing what they said, like every night you have to add another night of a donut. So the first night you eat 1 donut, the second night you eat 2 donuts, and if you don't eat the 2 donuts and you have a certain amount of time that you could eat those donuts, and if you don't eat it, it's very serious halachot. By the way, I'm joking for anybody, because there are going to be people that are going to get some sort of heart failure from listening to the class. They're like, well, the rabbi said I had to eat 8 donuts tonight. Sounds like injecting the thing into my.
But isn't there a thing about eating a donut segula for parnasa or something like that? No, no, seriously.
Brought to you by Weiss's Bakery.
No, seriously. No, someone was saying it was seriously from the Rashbam or something, it was seriously brought down.
There are skulos on it, and it's possible. It's possible. I had to look. I read. Truth is, I read it last year, so I have to read it again. But I have a sefer that reads about the skulot on Hanukkah, so it's possible. I can look it up afterwards if you want. I don't have the sefer here, but you have to remind me. Okay, so there's obviously something very special about this oil that we have to uncover. So the Greeks were known for their wisdom. In fact, the Greeks, were Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, all the great thinkers came from this, from Greece. The Jews became very much into this Greek, culture, the Greek wisdom. They were known as the Hellenists or the Misyavnim. Misyavnim means that those who turned Greek. So they went and they even built gymnasium. We know the Greeks were very into sport. They built, these great, arenas that stadiums maybe would be a better word, and they would play these sports with them. And the problem with that is not so bad just in the sport in itself, but rather before the sports they would actually have to worship or pay tribute to their gods. And even Jews, when they played in these arenas, they would play without any clothes. So the Jews also wanted to look like, if they wanted to compete in the games, they had to look like the Greeks. So they went under very painful operations to reverse their circumcisions. So they looked just like the Greeks. So the idea behind this is, before we get a little bit more, I want to delve into a little bit about the Greek methodology, or what the Greeks worshipped. You're talking about sophisticated people all the time, the people that pushed out the most advanced technology at that day, the most foremost thinkers of the day. Let's look about what they believed in. I want to take you in, and the point is not to do a whole class on Greek gods, but I do want to take you on a little bit of a journey on what they worship to get an idea of who they are. And the first thing that we have to know about the Greek gods is that they're all very human-like. They are all human-like, with human emotions, human, like the statues that you see of them are all like humans. They might have, a little bit of tentacles here and there, but they are, in essence, human-like creatures. So everyone's very familiar, I'm sure, with the Greek god called Zeus. He's the king of the gods. He controls the weather. His weapon is the thunderbolt. When I read this, it reminds me of like comic books when I read when I was younger. Like the waste of time, like on this one's power is, whatever, like turn into, to be honest, I don't remember anything. Okay, yeah. I'm trying to rack my brain for what I learned, but Baruch Hashem, I'm forgetting these things. So, yeah. And actually the Olympic Games, this was a festival that was dedicated to the god Zeus. You want to know the origin of where this Zeus came from? So there was a person, god, no one really cares. So whatever it is, so that he was afraid, he was a king, or a king-like structure, person, entity, whatever, and he was afraid that his children would go and kill him, because that's what he did to his father to get to the throne. So what he did is that he started to, and you could look this up, I mean, don't waste your time with this nonsense, but, he would eat because according to Greek mythology, he would eat his own children so they don't go and kill him later. So, obviously, his wife was very not into it, and they had the birth of their sixth child. They named him Zeus. And their wife, instead of giving him a child to eat, she gave him a stone to eat. So he ate the stone, thinking that it's a child. Questions, don't ask me. And then she took this Zeus and she put him in a cave. And this young god, whatever, is brought up by none other than a goat. That was his, that's who brought him up. And as he got older, this guy Zeus went and he reunited with his brothers and sisters, whatever, and they took over basically his father. They took care of him, and he became the god of all gods. That's how Zeus came, right? Completely makes sense. So whatever, yeah. Then there was a wife of Zeus. We're not going to go to all the names. It's Avodah Zarah. There's no need to go into it. But I just want to give you a little bit of an idea on what they were dealing with. Because again, these things are literally Avodah Zarah. So the wife of Zeus was the queen of the gods. But she was very jealous. She was a very jealous god because of all the affairs that her husband Zeus was having and all the illegitimate children that this other god was having. So these are the people that people are praying to, are looking up to. Then there was a god of war that some were woman god, some were men god. Then there was something called it was the god of the sun, the truth, the music, and poetry. You know what this god's name was? His name was Apollo. You know Apollo Theater? That was opened up in February 1901. This was named after the Greek god of music. So when you go to Apollo Theater, which you shouldn't, and you go listen to whatever they play in Apollo Theater, so this is named after, I'm not saying it's Avodah Zarah, but this is named after the Greek god Apollo. Then there was also a god of fertility and agriculture. And a very interesting story with her is that she had a daughter, and this daughter was, kidnapped by another god from the underworld, and this caused her a lot of grief because her daughter was kidnapped. So what she did is she stopped. There was like a famine. There was like there's no more crops, no more nothing, because she was so upset. Until another god came into the intervention, and he said to this god from the underworld, "Hey, listen, you got to bring her back." So they went and they reunited. But before he did that, he gave her some food to eat, because once he gives her food, obviously the halakha is in those days that they has to come back over there. So she knew she would have to visit every year, once a time, and she was very happy with that. At least he'd get back again. If you're not following me, very good. You should not be following me. And then he goes, every year, basically, she has to go and visit down this underworld, and that's why the crops don't grow for a certain period of time every single year. Makes complete sense if you are on drugs. The idea behind this, though, is what? The idea behind this is, look how far they went, not to show that, God does, there's no one God that controls the world. You know why there's a famine? Because listen, there's a funny story. Yeah, funny story. So there was a god, and it got kidnapped, and until just to not show that there's one God. Then we know the famous god Poseidon, however you pronounce that. There was a god of the sea, with a trident. And this is actually, the people in that time would actually pay tribute when they go on ocean. They would throw this hook into the ocean as tribute to the god of the ocean, not to go and make them a safe treat. You guys are familiar with this product line called Hermes? I don't know. Yeah. So there was a god called Hermes. Hermes is the company. Hermes is the god.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, but it's spelled the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pronunciation is different.
But I checked their source, and I believe they did name it after that, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm not mistaken. I have to look it up again, because I looked at a few things. It would be, anyways, another Greek god. There was another god, a god of war. This was not a popular god, because no one liked this god, because he was not really good. That, basically it. Then there was a god of emotions, and laughter, and wine, and all that. So they were basically polytheists, and they were, worshipping all these other gods. There was also a god called Nike. This god was a god of victory. Nike, named, it's, Nike, just do it, named after that. We don't know, when you look into all these things, some of these things are all based, it's not Avodah Zarah. I don't think if you buy Nike, you'll be like, okay, you can wear Nike now because Avodah Zarah, but look where its foundation comes from. So, there's a reason why I brought you through all this nonsense waste of time about Greek mythology and their Avodah Zarah. Alexander the Great, when he started ruling over the world, it was only a matter of time before he was convinced that he was not the son of his father, but he was actually the son of Zeus, and he was actually a god in himself. He considered himself very godly-like, or actually a god in essence. There is a Gemara in Tamid, page 32b, that says that he was traveling once, and he came to this river, and he had some fish, and there's two different opinions in it. One opinion says that the fish was, as he was washing the fish came back to life, or the river was giving a very, very pleasant smell, and he's like, there's something with this river, and he decided to follow the yellow brick road, which is the river, and Alexander, and he comes up, and it turns out that it's the entrance to Gan Eden. This is the river was coming out from Gan Eden. So this is the Gemara. Alexander says, open the gate for me. And they replied back, he said, this is a gate only for the righteous, not for the wicked. So he said, listen, I'm a king, I'm important person. If I can't come in, at least give me some sort of souvenir, give me a magnet. I can put it on my kitchen, like, you've been to Gan Eden. Give me something. So they gave him, they went to the gift shop, and they gave him a very common thing to give him, an eyeball. Here's a live eyeball. Enjoy. So he takes his eyeball, and he's like, very interesting. So he takes his eyeball, and he puts it on one side of the scale, and then he takes a bunch of gold and everything that he owns, and he puts it on the other side of the scale. And the gold weighs more than the eyeball, obviously, but the eyeball still outweighed it. And he's kept on piling more and more money and more gold and more valuables onto this, and the eyeball just kept on sinking to the bottom. So he was very puzzled by this, and he brought it to the Chachamim, to the sages. And he said, how is this possible? So he says, because an eye is never satisfied. No matter how much you give it, no matter how much you accomplish, no matter how much how much money you make, how much houses you buy, how many vacations you go, an eye is never satisfied. It always wants more. So they said, well, you do is like this. Put a little bit of dust on top of this eye, and the second that he put a little bit of dust in it, the eye went up, and everything, all the gold actually weighed it down. So it's because everybody is always going and chasing after all the great things that life can actually give us, and only until you're 6 feet under, until you have a little bit of dust that's covering over your eye, and then nothing. You can't take anything with you. The Gemara goes on and says something very interesting. Alexander the Great went and he asked 10 things to the sages. He had a conversation, he asked them 10 questions. I'm not going to go through all 10, I want to go through 3. He said to them, this is question number 4 out of the 10. He says, who is a wise man? Who is a chacham? And they said, somebody who foresees what's going to happen is going to be is a wise man. So he says, who is a wise man? Who is a mighty man? So it says, somebody who overcomes his desire, his evil inclination, or his inclination. That was question number 5. Question number 6 is, who is rich? Ezu ashir. And the Chachamim answered, somebody who is happy with what he has. Sameach bechalko. What Alexander was asking them, he was trying to some people feeding with give me some compliments. Be like, who's the fair? Whatever. You guys are a woman, so when you ask B'ezrat Hashem your husband, do I look pretty? You're not expecting, well, no. You're like, it's like you ask the person, the woman goes over to her husband and says, do I look fat in this dress? And he answers back and says, no, your fat makes you look fat. The dress has nothing to do with it. So, but generally, when a woman asks that to her husband, they're not going to be like, yes, you're fat in this dress. Rather, what they're saying is, of course, you're fishing for compliments. So, what Alexander was doing over here, he was like, listen, who's a wise man? He says, who my teacher was? His teacher was Aristotle. He says, who's a wise man? And not you. Somebody who foresees the what's going to come. So he says, oh yeah, okay. So who is somebody who's strong? I conquered the entire world. No, still not you. It's somebody who was able to overcome his desires. And we know that Alexander was very into his desires. He was a drunk. He was really went strongly after his desires. And then they said, what are we up to? Hacham, wise, who's rich? Somebody who is happy with his lot. Because he says, listen, he had a lot of money. He had a lot of money. Puts all the wealthy people down today in their back pocket as pocket change. And he said, no, you're not considered wealthy. Somebody who's happy with what he has, he is considered wealthy. So Alexander goes on and he says to them, we outnumber you Jews. You should fear us. Why don't you marry into us? Why don't you do that? So you know what the Chachamim answered? Listen very closely what the Chachamim answers. They said, the Satan deceives. You are above now, but you're going to descend into Gehenna, to hell. This is what they tell. There was no political correctness. Yes, Obama. Yes, of course. Yeah, we don't like Israel. Why would of course, let's give it to them. There was no political correctness. So no. He says, you're a wicked person. You're going to Gehenna. That's what the Chachamim told him. So Alexander the Great goes back to them. He says, I should kill you. He says, you're holding me in contempt over here. So the Chachamim answer, he says, yeah, you really could kill us. He says, but it doesn't befit a king to falsify his words, because the Alexander the Great promised them that he's not going to go and harm them if they just speak the truth. So we see over here that the essence of Alexander, the essence of Greek, was all about me, all about how great am I. Tell me how good I am, and everything surrounds the person. Everything surrounds me. They worship the human body. And that is why they fought in this, these stadiums without any clothes, because the human body was a temple. Where people say, like my body is a temple. That comes from Greek culture, saying that the body was an actual temple. Let's put that on pause a little bit on the Greek culture, and let's look at oil for a little bit. There's 4 interesting qualities in oil. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So now. When you look at oil, let's look at olive oil. The olive oil, delayed reaction. Okay. So the olive oil goes and it's actually very refreshing, this tea. So thank you very much.
So happy, it's peppermint.
Is that what it is? It's delicious. Okay. Thank you. Olive oil. The way that you get olive oil is by crushing and beating the ripe olives. It's sort of, you're really, really humbling these olives. You're like crushing them and destroying them to get the oil out of them. That's quality number 1. Quality number 2 is that, if you ever cooked with oil or anything and it gets a little bit on your hand, it takes you like 5 minutes to wash this thing off. You get like any type of oil. When oil penetrates very, very, very deeply. And that is why they had... back in the day, they used to use these oils as a type of like medicines, because it actually, when you rub the oil, it actually penetrates deep into the skin. That's number 2. Number 3 is oil doesn't mix with other liquids. It always keeps itself separate. And number 4 is not only does it keep it separate, it also rises to the top. You put oil and water, doesn't matter what you put first, what you put second, oil is going to rise to the top. So let us look at how these principles can apply to us. The crushing and the pressing of the olives is the notion of humility. Humility, when you can actually see yourself for who you really are, then you have an ability to grow. But if you constantly put a block, there are certain people that can't be criticized. Those people are not going to be able to grow. Because you can't tell me I'm not doing anything wrong. Either it could be low self-esteem, it could be a variety of reasons. But the reason is nonetheless that they're not going to be able, the bottom line is they're not going to be able to grow. The second one is the fact that we said that the oil penetrates very deeply. When you are arrogant, you are incapable of sharing yourself with others, and you're not capable of having others share themselves with you. The real you is always hidden. This is why I tell this to young couples that are getting married and engaged, and especially in this community, that the parents want a mixed dance wedding, and they don't want a mixed dancing wedding, and they say, listen, we tried to talk to my parents, they said, no, we're going to do it this way, and they're paying for it, what am I supposed to do? So I answer always the same thing, and it always works if you actually listen to the advice, is if you go to your parents and you tell them from the bottom of your heart, you open up, you become vulnerable to them, and you say, listen, I love you and I appreciate it, and I know this is what you want, and I know, but this is something that's extremely, extremely important to me. The more that you open up and the more vulnerable that you show yourself to your parents, what do you think the parents are going to be like? No, still, a parent wants a child to be happy. And they will overcome their own happiness and their own needs and wants to make a child happy. And if you show them how sincere you are in this, you think they're not going to want to do it. And this is the secret behind getting anything that you want in life.
You didn't meet enough
this is the main thing. Well, it worked. I spoke to a few, and it actually worked. So it depends on the Gorski families. But I really feel that worked. At the end of the day, maybe they just didn't try hard enough. If you're vulnerable enough, what do you think the parents are going to make you suffer? Be like, no. Of course not. They don't. That's not what parents are interested. At least most parents. So the idea is when you make yourself vulnerable, when you open up to others, you're able to penetrate a lot deeper. You're able to get inside that other person. The other person is able to understand you in a much higher level. That is the idea that, when people are dating and they have they're sort of, I get this from both sides, from both the men and the women, they have a hard time opening up. Like if you have a hard time opening up, you're not going to be able to make a connection. Why don't they want to, open up? Because they don't want to get hurt. Like you gotta try something. Granted, you might get hurt. Yeah, you might. But that's why we have the whole shidduch process to sort of prevent a lot of those issues. But at the end of the day, in order to get connected to somebody, you have to open up. The same idea, the oil is able to seep very, very deep in. It's able to have that ability. If you open up, if you take rid of that arrogance, and you take a little bit of that humility, you open up, you're going to be able to penetrate it very, very deeply in relationships. Besides that you penetrate deeply in relationships, you have to know there's something very distinct. That there's some people when they become let's say a group of friends, they sort of merge into like one being. They start having the same likes, they start doing the same things. You have one guy who never wanted to smoke, but everybody that's friends is smoking, so eventually he ends up smoking. You have certain girls or whatever, they get into a certain thing that they get into. All of a sudden, everybody gets into this thing that they get into. Even though you're supposed to go and open up and whatever, especially to your spouse, close friends, whatever it is that you're opening up to, you still have to have your distinct identity. It's you and it's not them. You have to still remain who you are. Similar to the oil, like even though it's able to penetrate very deeply, but it still keeps separate. It's still separate. I want to share with you something from that Rabbi Nachman Mendel of Kotsk said, and we said this before, but I think this line is amazing, and I'm going to quote it for you word for word. If I am I because you are you, and you are you because I am I, then I am not I, and you are not you. But if I am I because I am I, and you are you because you are you, then I am I, and you are you. You followed me?
Yeah.
Say that 10 times fast. Okay, so the idea behind this is that if you are trying to be somebody because somebody else, then that's not really you. If somebody else is trying to be somebody because then it's not them. And that change never stays. The only way that you are able to change is only if you change for you. And in order to change for you, you have to want that. You have to want that change. And that's the step that takes into there. So that was the third aspect of the oil, which even though you're opening up, you're able to get deep into in a relationship, you still have that ability to stay distinct and to stay separate. Finally, is the fourth process that it rises to the top. If you follow these three processes, you will always rise to the top. You always will be above. The idea of rising to the above is strong. It holds very, very strongly when it comes to Hanukkah. And I want to share with you something that the Shem Ishmuel brings down. Brings down in Chanukah. He says, that the Greeks, we know they defied all the oil. How did they do that? Have you ever thought about that? Were they like, dame, like a little kid, I licked it, you can't touch it, it's mine now, so you lick all the donuts in the bag, and now it's all defiled, you can't touch it. What is the problem if a Gentile that worships Avodah Zarah touches the oil? Are you allowed to use the oil? Yeah. If it's wine, we know wine is a problem. Wine you cannot use for that if an idol worshiper touches. But oil, what's the problem with oil? Says the Shem Yishmuel, it quotes the Bamidbar Rabbah. Midrash says like this. It says that there were three gifts that were given in the world, and anybody who merits any one of them takes delight in all the world. And these are the three gifts. It's wisdom, strength, and wealth. And he says wealth is the most external to the person, as it's not actually part of the person, and it's visible to others. Other people are able to see if this person is wealthy. Now, obviously, you could hide it, but it's the most external, and this way you could see it the most. Strength is less external, but it's still, and I'll give you an idea. You can't, when you look at a person, you can't say like, oh yeah, this person is very strong. I have seen like people that look like they're scrawny little people, and they could lift so much weight. And then you see somebody who's like 6'5", like 400 pounds. He looks like he ate 4 of those skinny guys, and he can't lift a half of what that skinny guy can lift. I see that all the time. The strength doesn't always show up by what it looks outside. So it's less external than wealth, but it's still more external. However, wisdom of the three are the most concealed. It's something that's hidden. You can't look at a person and say like, oh yeah, this person is smart. You can't. There are many people that are very well dressed and they speak gibberish. They you can't even make sentences out. And there are some, look at mad scientists. They look like with the hair is, like Einstein here, they're all over the place. You look at them, you think like, okay, I don't know where he came from. He's wearing the lab coat. Maybe he belongs in a place under the lab coat, and it turns out this guy's a genius. So wisdom is very, very much hidden to the outside eye. The 3 early exiles prior to Chanukah, is characterized by these three things. Bavel was characterized by strength. They were known for their strength, their power, their might. Their might. Paras u'Madai, the story of Purim, they were known for their wealth. We know in Esther, the first chapter in the fourth pasuk, it says that Ahasuerus was showing everybody his wealth. It was an extremely wealthy country. The Greeks were known for their wisdom. And each one we're going as the same one that we spoke prior. So now, the Greeks are known for the wisdom, and not only did they oppress the Jews, but they also tried to take over their wisdom. They tried to take that Torah wisdom and defile it. It wasn't just like the oil. There's a lot. It went a lot deeper. They tried to take the whole wisdom of the Greek mythology and put it into the Jewish. Forget about you. Forget about being upright. Forget about the Torah. Focus on this. This is the right wisdom. And we know oil in Torah thought expresses wisdom. In the time of when the Bet HaMikdash was built, Shlomo Melech did something very interesting. Is that in the olden days when they had windows, so the windows were narrow on the outside, and the inside it was wide, so we could let out the light, but at the same point in time keep a little bit of modesty, so it doesn't show that people can't look at it because it's a very narrow slit of the window. The Bet HaMikdash was done completely opposite. It was narrow on the inside and it branched out on the outside, to show really that from the wisdom that comes from the Kodesh Kadishim, the menorah, which we know is based off wisdom, is putting out wisdom to the entire world. And it's narrow on the inside, so as not to go and bring all the bad influence into the world coming in from outside. So that is the oil is the wisdom. And we know people that they pray towards the menorah, that there's certain things that were focused for the wisdom, as opposed to the shulchan for panasam. So different things on it. The Greeks wanted to contaminate the Torah wisdom, the oil of the Jews, and defile it with Hellenism. There was, however, something that the Greeks could not pollute, and that was to internalize the secrets of the Torah. They couldn't get to the secrets of Torah. It says in Iyov, in the 28th chapter, in the 12th verse, it says that V'chachma me'ein timatzeh, wisdom where it will be found, but you can read it a little bit differently. You can read it that chachma, wisdom, me'ein, it will come out from nothingness. Me'ein is from nothingness, it will be found. You know where you can get the real wisdom? From nothingness, from humility. We know that humility plays a very, very strong high level of standing in Judaism. We know that Moshe Rabbeinu, he was the most humble person that ever lived, and he knew the most secrets of the Torah. He knew the secret of the Paraduma, what no one else knew. He knew secrets that nobody else knew because of his humility. There is disputes in the Mishnah between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. Who do we pass like Beit Hillel? It's a very large. They were known for their humility. The Aaron HaKohen, which he was known also for his humility. Ma'anachnu ma'chayinu, says Aaron, said Moshe. So we have the wisdom is really sort of cloaked in this character trait of humility. The Greeks represent the complete opposite of humility. Aristotle proclaimed something so arrogant. He said anything that he was not able to understand was by definition untrue. Imagine you go on a date and this guy says that. You first should run very far away. Maybe throw some, whatever. But run very, very far away. I don't have an arrogance to that. Anything that you don't understand is by definition not true. I have arguments with these type of people sometimes. They claim, I don't understand God, so it doesn't exist. I'm like, oh, really? Oh, so you're the litmus test, I guess. I guess we'll run everything by you. Do you understand how medication works? How does an airplane fly? I know it works, whatever. They say there are people that deal with just so much arrogance, there's nothing to talk about. You can't speak to them because they're all up on their high horse. The influence of the Hellenism was very far reaching. It reached everywhere, but it could not reach the inner aspect, the inner wisdom of that possessed by the Jews. The military victory was awesome. It was unbelievable. It was really crazy. But it didn't last. This is something that it stayed for a little bit, and eventually Rome took over and the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed. But something did last, and that is the oil. The oil, what it represents. The oil is that flame that is hidden in each and every person, that little flask of wisdom that is deep inside. They only found only one flask of wisdom. But guess what? They lit it. It lasted for 8 days. There's a flask of wisdom hidden in every single Jew. This is for eternity. All you have to do is find that flask. Once you find that flask, you light it. It's going to stay up forever. The idea behind this is, think of it like this, why are we making such a big idea on the oil? And I heard this very nice little shot, this explanation. There is two kids that are playing hide and seek. And, one kid, like to a certain point in time, like no one could find him. So he gets out and he goes to his father and he starts crying. And his father says, why are you crying? He says, because I was playing hiding and seek. And the father says, what's the problem? He says, but no one found me. So he's like, good, that means you won. And the kid said, no, but they stopped looking. He says, that's why they couldn't find me. He says, we go, the miracle of Hanukkah, you know what the miracle of Hanukkah was? We were searching for God. We were searching for God. We went off. We were too much in the Hellenistic culture, the Greek culture, and we just wanted to find God. We would have been able to light with any oil. It was not a halakhic issue like we can only light with this oil. We can light with any single oil that we would have found. It would have been completely kosher. Tuma hutra b'tzibur. We would have been allowed to do it. But we went to hide for God. We went to search for God, and God was hidden. But then we found him. That was the miracle. The miracle was that we went to search for him. We searched for God. And when we found that, it was further. We have to search each and every one of us, inside of us. There is something that's hidden in each and one of us, this little piece of spirituality. You find that in each person, whether they're secular, whether not, it doesn't matter. You find that, you light that, they're good for life. It's going to last forever. I want to finish off with one story. It's a story I read recently that there was once a guy. He was becoming more religious, and but it's a process. And he was one Shabbat he was on the beach. Again, didn't know all the halachot, so he was sitting on the beach on Shabbat, and there was a woman it was in California, and there was a woman that was walking there with her 2 children. And she says, excuse me, sir, do you by any chance have some juice? Not for me, for my children. I don't have anything to give them, and they're really, really thirsty. So the man says, yeah, by all means. He took, he had some bottle of water or juice, and he gives it to the kids. The woman, they drink it, they say thank you, and they walk away. This guy, he remembers that he's keeping Shabbat. He doesn't know what overcame him, and he's like, shalom. You ever gone anywhere, ever, and you see somebody, and that is like, oh, you're Jewish? Shalom. Be like, oh, you speak my language. I'm so connected to you right now. I feel like we just shared a moment. And he's like, what are you talking about, man? I just said shalom. And he's like, do that. It's interesting, what happens. But, because you see, they're like, oh, yarmulke. They're like, hey, kosher, right? Yeah. So he goes, and he has no idea. He's just said shalom. And then she turns back at him, and she's like, Shabbat shalom. And he's like, oh, Shabbat shalom. And she's like, why did you say shalom? He's like, I didn't even know why I said shalom to you. He says, you don't even look Jewish. And she's like, I'm not Jewish. So he says, so how do you know about Shabbat shalom? He says, because my husband is Jewish. And he was very, not into the spirituality, but I really wanted my kids to be, spiritual. They got to talking, and they sort of, she sort of opened up her story. In summary, she said that, she married this Jewish guy, but her husband was very adamant against sending the children to a Jewish school. He didn't want any part of religion in the house. So after a certain point in time, he started drinking, he started acting out against the kids, against the wife, so she decided she's going to run away. And she took her 2 children and she ran away. And she says, actually, we're living in our van because we don't have anywhere to go. And she says, all I want to do is I want to teach my children that there's some sort of godliness, there's some sort of spirituality in the world. So this man, hearing this woman and her, her situation, he's like, you know what? Believe it or not, I know a place that you could stay for a few weeks until you get back to your feet. And she's like, really? You would do that for me? He's like, yeah. He says, they took her. I don't know if they waited till after Shabbat. I don't know what the story was, but they went and they took her out of the van, and he went and he gave her this little apartment that he had available that she was able to stay with her 2 children. So this woman kept on pressing, because this guy he's not religious yet, but he's Jewish and he's getting closer to religion. And she says, she goes to him and he says, listen, you know more Judaism than I. Please teach my children something about Judaism. So, he didn't know. Hanukkah was coming up, so he decided he's going to teach them the blessings of lighting the menorah, lighting Hanukkah. So that's what they did. And they, every day they came and they practiced the blessings. They practiced some songs. And it was a very odd scene going on, because here you have a Jewish man who's not really religious teaching 2 non-Jewish children about Hanukkah, while the mother ran away from the father who is Jewish. It was a very interesting situation. Anyways, one night, it was, the time, was getting closer to Hanukkah, and one night, every night they would come and they would practice the blessings and the singing and how to light, and they didn't come. So the man was getting a little bit nervous. He's like, what's going on so late? No, she's not coming here. Eventually, a short while afterwards, she burst into the house, frantic, screaming, like, he took them, I don't have them. And he's like, what are you talking about? He says, her husband found out where she was, took the children, took him to his parents' house, or the children's grandparents' house, and they were not going to let me see them. So, shouting and screaming hysterically, this man said, let me call your husband or your in-laws. Let me see if I can speak to them. So he phones her in-laws, the children's grandparents, and says, listen, they were staying by me, and they were talking a regular civilized conversation. The parents saw that he was a decent person, and they said, listen, can we at least visit? Can the mother at least visit the children? So they said, you could come to visit, but only for 15 minutes. That's all you're going to get for 15 minutes. And, it happened to be that night was, it was Xmas, and it was also, one of the nights in Hanukkah. And, the mother said, the mother of the two children said, you know what? So going for 15 minutes, at least let them go and light some menorah, light them something. But she goes and she decided that they went together because she was going to, sing with them the songs and tell them how to light. And as they're getting closer to the parents' house, to her in-laws' house, she says, I have to tell you something, that even though my in-laws are Jewish, they are, very, very adamant about not being Jewish. And they celebrate Xmas like you've never seen it, like machmir, mehudah, like the most, like the Hasidim of the Xmas. They're like do the most that they possibly can for the Xmas, very extravagantly. So he says, okay, fine. I guess we'll do what we can. So they go and they travel up to this beautiful house in Sacramento, California, and this guy goes out with this woman, and they go with this little disposable menorah and some candles, and he looks at this house, which is bedazzled to you could see it from outer space. It's like lighting up and everything, and they ring the bell. The grandfather opens up the door. His mouth drops. This guy was with that's taking care of the kids. This grandfather was just fully dressed in Santa Claus, like from head to toe, jolly, everything painted, whatever, like rosy cheeks, like everything to the T. And he's like, all right, you guys have 15 minutes. So the kids see their mother, see that this man that was helping them out. They ran over, they gave them this big hug, and they said, the mother said, the mother who's not Jewish said, listen, he said, we only have 15 minutes. Let us go. Let us quickly light the menorah. At least get the song out, and at least we get that for the 15 minutes that we have. So they put this menorah very nicely next to the Xmas tree, and hopefully lighting the Xmas tree. No, I'm kidding. They went and. They went and they gave the kids the candles, and the kids practiced in it. They knew it, and they started saying the blessing. After they said the blessing, they lit the candles like they're supposed to do. And then the kids said, they were so excited, they're actually lighting the candles. They said, can we sing the song that we practice? And the mother was like, sure. And the man, together with the kids, they started singing the songs. They sang the song Ma'os Tzur. After they finished the last verse of the song, this guy turns around and he take a look at the grandparents, and sees to his amazement that Mr. Santa Claus and Mrs. Santa Claus, they were holding hands, and Santa took off his beard, took off his hat, and he had tears in his eyes. And even the husband, who was there also was full with tears of the eyes. And the husband pulled aside his wife and he says, he says, when the children were lighting those candles, I felt something special. And I promise you that I'm going to find them in a Hebrew school to enroll them. When the woman heard these words, a smile for the first time in a few weeks broke out of her face. And as time went by, she decided that she wants to undergo conversion. She started getting closer and closer to religion, and her children started becoming more observant, which is a slight problem if they're not Jewish. But she decided she's going to undergo conversion. The problem is that her grandmother was a very, very devout Catholic, and her mother passed away when she was young. She didn't know who her father was. So she decided that her grandmother raised her as a devout Catholic. If she finds out that she's turning into a Jew, forget about it. You have no place in in their world. So she decided, she wants to convert, but she has to tell her grandmother. I mean, she can't hurt her. So she calls up her grandmother and says, Grandma, you know that I've been interested in Judaism for quite a while now, and I've made up my mind that I'm going to convert. And I'm just sorry if I'm going to disappoint you, because I know that you're a very devout Catholic. So please don't be angry with me. When the grandmother heard these words, she began to cry. And she says, I have to tell you something. And she says, I went through the concentration camp during the Holocaust and survived. And afterwards, I came to America, and I promised that I will never, ever make my children go through what I went through. And I decided I'm going to give them the best life possible by showing them the complete opposite of Judaism, and I went into Catholicism. And she says, you don't have to convert. You are already a Jew. She says, what do we see from this? See, all you needed is that little light. The little spark in every one of us is there. It's there. It's hidden. It's hidden deep in the recesses of our hearts, but it's there. It's there. We got to go and we got to search for it. Just like the Hashmonaim, the Kohanim went and they searched for that little flask of oil hidden inside in it. They found this one pure, just want to do good, just want to be close to God, that one pure little flask of oil. When they found it, there was something miraculous, but it wasn't such a big miracle because that's what it is. It is who we are. Our spirituality, our wisdom, that's our oil. You find that in each and every one of you and each and every one of your friends. You find that and you light that, you will be good. Eventually, everybody's going to come around, and B'ezrat Hashem, everybody will come around. We'll have Mashiach b'meher b'yameinu. We're going to light the Hanukkah candles in Yerushalayim. Any questions? No questions.
Yeah, isn't the reason that they couldn't use the oil because the guy broke the Cohen seal?
Yeah, but you don't need a seal for that.
I thought you do. That's why they couldn't use it. And they found
Nope, they could have used it. But they could use any oil.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't get that. The point that we're remembering is that they searched for the oil. So why did they search for oil if they didn't?
Great question. What was the whole point of it? If they could have done it, because like if there's a certain, I speak with a lot of people who do a lot of bad things in their life, and they get very emotional. They just want to do good already. They're finished with that, and they want to have this clean. And there's like a certain, like this like urge, like I just want to do good. We didn't have the temple for a while. It was defiled. Everything was just done bad. We weren't satisfied with like, okay, we want to do the best that we could possibly do. That urge, like I just want to do it perfectly. I just want to do it the way that it's supposed to be doing on the highest level possible. So they went and they searched for that oil, even though they didn't need it, because they wanted to show God, we're not just doing it just to get out. We're doing it because we want to show you how much this means to us. It completely means something else when you're just doing something, as opposed to it just like, give you an example like this. When someone gives you a gift, and the gift is, just given, it's nice. But imagine they went through the whole thing to wrap it, and they put a nice little note to it, and how much you mean. Many times the wrapping, even though you rip it off to see what's inside, but the wrapping and the note, that means a lot more than the actual gift itself. It's that what shows you inside. Now, when you look at this in the Hanukkah perspective, God had to save us. I mean, we're His children. What He's going to do? Otherwise the world would cease to exist. So He had to save us. The miracle of the Chashmanim had to happen. But the miracle of the candles, that didn't need to happen. No, the God's going to be like, you're not going to find anything. You don't need it. That little finding is that little bow, that little extra wrapping around the gift of Hanukkah. That shows God that I didn't save you because I have to. I saved you because I want to. That's why I saved you. And we go back to God and be like, we're not doing this because we have to. We're doing this because we want to. Because if we just had to do it, we could have done it with anything. We're showing God, no. We're doing it to the top of the level. That's why when you do mitzvot, it's best to do a little bit extra. It's best to do just a little bit extra, a little bit nicer, beautified. You have to be modest. Just do a little extra. You have to pray. Just do a little extra kavanah. You'll pass. You got that check mark. You kept Shabbat. You did it right. You're very good. But when you do it from like, oh no, I want to do it something. You add a little bow into it. You add this wrapping into it. That changes everything. And that's what we went through. This God gave us that little bow. We gave that bow also right back. Make sense? Any other questions?
A non-Jew is allowed to pour you like liquor? I mean, not allowed to pour you liquor?
Wine, specifically wine.
Just wine?
Yeah, unless it's mevushal.
What does that mean?
You'll see on the bottle it says mevushal. It's like cooked, yeah.
Pasteurized or something. Not pasteurized.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, if all the Greek mythology, if they were such rationalists and so into science, wouldn't you think they'd be more like atheists?
Right, so the reason, very good. So I didn't actually speak about this. What was the whole idea? You know what they were doing by building all these gods? Well, who in the sane mind can believe that? I mean, come on. Like this, I mean, granted, some of them believe them, but the people that started it, the idea behind it was, no. They're giving them an okay to do everything that they wanted to do. They wanted to chase their desires. Listen, if Zeus has, illegitimate children, what's the problem? Like we could have it. We could become just as powerful. You okay things. It makes it okay. There's no conscience to it. No, this is allowed. This is fine. So they build this whole thing chasing after me. Chasing after B, the big I. I'm the arrogant me. Everything goes after what I want and what I desire. That is exactly what's 100% opposite from the Torah mythology. There's a lot to speak about it. I know we went a little bit fast on it, but I think the idea here is really phenomenal and there's really important. Yes.
The kosher kitchen? Something about kosher kitchen? I have kosher kitchen in my alarm. I don't know why.
What are you?
No, you told me to remind you.
About oh, thank you. Yes. Oh, look at that. That's unbelievable. I met a couple a while back that they have this, and I wanted to put this on camera, so very good, thank you. There's some people that become more religious, and they don't know they have their dishes when they were not religious. How are they supposed to go and Yeah, like redo the whole kitchen, like get rid of everything. There's a rabbi out there, and I hope he doesn't mind me putting it up over here and on camera, that he comes to your home with a big pot, and he basically makes everything kosher, and he tells you what it can be or what it can't be. It can't do it, and I'm going to tell you, I believe this is it. And I hope that he doesn't mind me saying this, but I think it's a great, it's a really thing. I really don't think that he would mind. That's why I would say it. It's called Go Kosher. Go search Go Kosher online, gokosher.org, I think it is. And he is able to comes into your house with a big pot, koshers everything, tells you how to do it. He sits over there. You sit back and he does everything for you. And I don't even think he charges. It's just like by donation or things like that. It's unbelievable. So if anybody is in that situation and they want to go and they want to make their kitchen kosher, go to this, gokosher.org. This class is brought to you by gokosher.org.
Well, one thing, the business card right next to you,
Yes.
you would mention it, it's a free app. It just happens to me as you don't tell them that I told you.
Okay, what is this? It's called One Tehillim. This class is co-sponsored by One Tehillim. So this is an app, right? This is an app that you go and you're allowed. Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah, my husband made an app.
It's only in the App Store, it looks like.
So yeah, right now.
Right now, it's only in the App Store. Okay.
It's free. You can make Tehillim groups. You could send out
So,
emergency Tehillim reading.
It's called One Tehillim. O-N-E Tehillim. Tehillim. Please go to it. Go say Tehillim for your fellow Jews, for yourself. It is great. That's amazing. That's really good. Hebrew and English. Hazakabul. Yeah. Unbelievable. Hazakabul. Any other questions, announcements, sponsorships? I don't know. We're doing everything here.
If Hashem had to save us, would he have had to save us like by the Cheshbonon? Technically, if the Greeks would have won, Hashem just would have saved us another way. We still would have kept everything.
Oh, so you're saying we could have, you're saying could have been done, but ultimately would have been saved.
Right, so it didn't have to happen.
Didn't have to happen this way. It didn't happen, right.
Everybody says it has to happen here. No, it didn't.
But it had to happen ultimately.
Eventually.
Right, so eventually the end result would have been the same. However, depending how the result came out. So yeah, granted, it's a crazy miracle. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't. Any other questions?
Yeah, why was Alexander the Great able to even see the gates of?
Oh, good question. No clue. Why did he have that ability? He was able to. There's stories in the Gemara where he went and he got into a place that it's a place that's only ruled by women. It's very there's interesting stories by him. How to understand that? Not today's discussion. But it's also very deep and complex. Did he have, how you read into these stories? Any other questions? Off camera only. Okay. Chazak Baruch. Hanukkah Sameach.